Okay, so let's drop ABD constraint properties, plug that in down there. Just make sure I've got that, yeah, load from disk on there. So for the metal, we'll just want soft constraints. You could have them as glue at the beginning and then turn into soft constraints. I just found that soft from the get-go worked well for me, right? So stiffness that I found, so I kind of had to play around with these values a bit in here, right? So stiffness I dropped down to 5, so that's just the general how. Let's see if we zoom in on these. Let's do a IBD exploded view. We use a lot of these exploded views, don't we? Okay, just so we can see the constraints. I'm going to drop the scale down, say it's 0.1, so they're pretty close together. So if I zoom in now, okay, so we can see the constraints holding these together, right? So here, the stiffness there is how stiff these are, you know, from by pulling themselves apart. As long as you have this checked, which is override angular stiffness, so that's how difficult it is for this to rotate around. So I want that to be way easier. Okay, so I want these to be pretty kind of floppy, if that doesn't sound too strange. I want them to be able to turn a lot. Okay, and then we got this damping ratio, so that's kind of like how springy it is. So you know, if this is able to bend a lot, is it going to be coming back very quickly as well, and kind of maintaining that energy and going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And I don't want that, right? I want the metal to kind of bend and pretty much stay there. So you could do that with damping. Also plasticity does that. Plasticity is great, but for this simulation I'm not going to bother with it, because it's, you know, you need a lot of sub steps to get it working, so it's quite expensive to get working, and is kind of a bit complex. Obviously it depends on the shots, right? And also in our sim the metal is really pretty much going to be in movement the whole time, so you know, it's useful when you've got, say, a piece of metal that, let's say, collides, like a car crash, for example. You see the car crash into a wall, and then when you see the car come away, you want the metal to stay where it's deformed to. But in this case, we've got metal that's, you know, colliding into something else and then into something else, and it just keeps being banged around all over the place. And also, again, because of the scale, we're not going to be, you know, we're not going to notice something from this far out, and this dampening will help that a lot as well. So 10 on the angular, and then 5 I've got here. Yeah, I'm going to leave the plasticity. You can play around with it if you like, you know, try out the angular plasticity. I'm going to turn that off, and then let's pack this. So IBD configure. Okay, connect that up there. There we go, and then set this to what do I want? Just change this here down to metal. Just change the physical properties a little bit. Probably won't have that much difference, to be honest. You got different options here. Let's do steel. I think that's most likely what these would be. I don't know. Okay, and then we can go into our solver. So IBD bullet solver. Plug that in. Okay, and then obviously we'll want a ground plane. So just visualize this by itself. Now, obviously we need more than that to simulate this correctly. Let's see what this results. We'll just get kind of a floppy mess probably, but let's just watch that. Right, I've just stopped that there because it's just kind of, as I said, collapsing in on itself like that. Just a kind of bendy mess. But that's okay. You know, I'm not expecting it. Well, I don't want this to hold itself up because we are going to be using the, where is it? Whoops, the guided sim. Okay. So what I'm going to do is come over here. Okay. And I'm going to alt-click and drag on this OIBD IO. And what I want is the proxy geometry here into the main geometry. So that way it'll be a lighter kind of thing, you know, we got less geometry there. So I'm going to grab that and click save to disk there. Actually, don't do that. You want to, so I'm going to go back here, click save to disk on the normal geometry. We need to change the name there. So, and then come here and go to rest, do dot proxy, because we'll overwrite the other one otherwise. See, proxy there, and then save that. So remember, we're not saving the whole simulation here, just there. So just to visualize that. So there we've got, you know, the simulation geometry there. Do we? Is that? Let me go to smooth wire shaded. Let me unpack it just to double check we've got the right thing. Yeah, that's the proxy geometry, okay? And then this is the, you know, render geometry at the end. There we go, yeah. So yeah, I'm going to use this for our sim there. Let me just, I'll drop a null here because it'll be a bit messy otherwise. So let's say, we'll call this out concrete proxy sim. Okay. Copy that and object merge it over here. So object merge. Again, this is purely for, you know, to be tidy. Okay, visualize that. So we got the concrete there, and this will go into our guided sim and also into the collision geometry. So we want it to collide with the concrete, the metal that is. We want the metal to collide with the concrete, obviously, but also we want the metal to follow the simulation of the concrete that we've already made. So in the past, I would just build constraints between the concrete and the metal, but I found it's really problematic and kind of fiddly and finicky and annoying trying to get a nice simulation with that. So I found that the guided sim was faster and more stable, basically. So let's first just delete some of the attributes we don't need on here, and it could be problematic, like this coming out of a sim and then going back in here. You know, it could be a problem if we've got things like active and stuff like that. Yeah. So if we delete everything except for the name attribute, because that could be a problem if we don't have a name on one but we do on the other. Okay. And then nothing there. Path attribute we don't need. Just delete everything we don't need from there. And then just make sure that we've got the name attributes everywhere. So attribute promote. I'm not sure if it's really important, but it's just good to be safe. So I'm going to put let me come down here, grab the name attributes, which we should have. Let me just double check. Name there, yeah. Okay, so name onto primitives, and don't delete the original, so that way we've got the name on both. And then I'm going to drop a time blend so that we've got this, we've got information, subframe information, right? So if I turn off integer frame values, start going forward, let me just go forward into the sim so everything's moving more. Okay, and then I move a little bit. You can see we've got movement there. Okay, so integer frame back on. You see it pop back into place then. And then both these into the collision and the guided sim back to the first frame. And then let's see now in the bullet solver, a few things I want to do in here. So on the bullet object, let's turn off bounce. We don't want this to be bouncy at all. Should have done that on the concrete as well, but it's fine. It came out, we got a nice result. So collisions, we need this to be animated static is fine. Bounce, we'll turn that off here as well. We've got a ground plane. Forces, let's, I'm going to add some drag to this. Set this to 0.01. Okay, to calm everything down a bit. But you know what, I find doing secondary simulations, especially when I'm trying to get things to follow along with an initial simulation, is difficult. You need things like drag and constraints and kind of playing around with constraint values to get something that works nice. As soon as you have a animated collider, it can be difficult to get a nice smooth sim. But this is what I found worked okay. So I'm allowed some drag spin as well, just leave that at default. What else? That's all fine. For the constraints, we want to turn that off because we don't want those soft constraints to break, okay? We want them to stay together always. And then if we go into guided sim here, let's go in and visualize this. Okay, so now we see our collider. Let's turn on use guides. And we will, this has kind of got me, I simulated this whole thing and then realized I need 350 frames and this only goes up to 240. That was a little bit annoying. I don't know why they just by default don't have the, the end frame in there. There's a variable for it. I can't remember what it is now, but change that to whatever the end of your simulation is. Strength, so that's how strongly do you want to follow the animation. Okay, so I'm going to push that up to 5. And then distance, so this piece will be constrained. I'm going to, let's see here, geometry, wire of pack geometry, so we can see this bit better. So for example, this piece will be constrained to, not just one piece that's next to it, but a few different pieces, and how strongly it's constrained to them is governed by this and this, right? So, from 0 to 5 meters, the strength will go from 1 down to 0.25 or 5, whatever that is. So I'm going to drop that down to 0.1. So I only want these metal bits to be constrained to concrete pieces that are 1 meter away. So quite close. Okay. Really important thing to do as well is remove intra-guide constraints. So that means when you have, this will delete constraints. So if you have one piece of your guide geometry, which is guiding 2 separate active objects which are constrained together, it will delete those constraints. We definitely don't want to do that, okay? So turn that off. That's useful if you're not doing metal bending or something, and just it can save you simulation time because those constraints will be solved each frame. And then here in the simulation settings, we've got this blend of the velocity. So that's blending between the actual, you can see here, direct velocity and the angular velocity. So there's a kind of targeted velocity. So the pieces, basically internally, it's like a pointer form. They're being pointer formed to just rigidly follow the animation of the other pieces, and then you're kind of blending in between those, right? And at a certain point, if the simulation doesn't allow or within these kind of parameters, then it will just break away and be allowed to move freely. So that kind of blend between is guided by this, and I'm going to lower it a bit so it's a bit more free to move around, right? And that's pretty much it, I think. In advanced, I don't know if we want to, maybe add more sub-steps, but I don't think I'll bother. I'm going to turn on this randomized constraints order. It just says basically that it makes it a bit more stable, so I turn that off turn that on sometimes. We can use this in here, show guided. So you should see these turn blue. So while they are being guided by the collision geometry, they'll be blue, and then as soon as they're free, they won't be blue. But I'm just going to cache this out straight away without watching that, so don't worry about that if you don't want to. So let's just cache this out. So RBD.io, just like before, connect the first geometry and the points. Changes to geometry and points. Whole frame range is good. Let's go in here. Oops, I don't want to save that. We need to go in there. I've just created a default one. That doesn't matter. We'll grab the let's see the other rest. That's what we don't want. Oh yeah, that's because they're gone into geo, so we want this in the sim. So concrete, I'm just gonna do that for now and then change this to metal. 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 Okay, rest, and then this one will be again in sim, concrete, that one, and then change these to metal. Oh, and I don't want rest, I want $F3. There we go. Okay, so I found this simulation did take quite a bit longer than the concrete one, so you know, allow for that. It could be kind of maybe an overnight kind of simulation, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, you may want to, an option is to delete, you know, like just the front face and just kind of see how that goes, just to make sure. Maybe just wait and watch my next video to make sure that everything goes okay before leaving yours to cache out as well. So I'm going to save that and then save this.